Documentation block is a piece of comment or documentation in your source code that informs you what function of a certain class, method, or any other structural element in your code is for. So now the question might be, what's then the difference between doc block or documentation block and normal comment which we do? So normal commenting is basically a human readable format. Like, there is no particular format to write a comment, it's just meant for humans to read. But doc block, obviously it's also meant for humans to read and understand what's the functionality of a function, what parameters it take, and etc. regarding other structural elements also. But another major important part of doc block is the machine reading capability of doc block. So doc block is a very specified format in which you write comments for functions or files or classes which machines will read, or rather I will say different programs might read and perform different functions. So some examples will be something like static code analyzers. So those basically read the doc blocks of functions, class, files, and then analyzes your code and finds bug without literally executing the code. Another example is, for example, some documentation program that is generating automatic documentation by just scanning through your code base. And how do you think it does that? Through the doc blocks of the code. And doc block structures are very much language specific, and also doc blocks are present at certain areas of the code and not like before every line. So doc blocks are, for example, used to tell what a function does, what a constant is, what a constant's data type is, then what a class is, then maybe the return type of a function, then the parameter types which the function take, etc. So let's now dive into a code and see how this actually works. So here's a sample code and let's look at it. So firstly, as you can see, this is a PHP file, simple PHP file, which just have one function named sum, and we are even not calling that function also. We are just doing a random echo and that's it. But what we are interested about is this part, which is, as you can see, this first one, this is a doc block and this is the file comment. So every file, we define the file in the first place only, that why this file is required, who wrote this file, then maybe which package it belongs to. And as you can see, there are some other tags also. So these are called tags, and there are some other tags also like category or license or link, etc. So this is the overall file document. After that, we have a echo statement, and as you can see, this is just a normal comment and doesn't relate anything to this PHP doc thing we are talking about. Next one, there is a function, which, as you can see, is a structural element. Function is a structural element, and this has a doc block, which is this one. So this basically explains the function's functionality, tells about what is the return type of the function, what parameter it takes, what are their data types, and why those parameters are for. Like, wherever suppose you are using this function, for example, sum, your IDE will automatically generate this documentation for you. And how do you think it generates it? It generates it through this doc block and nothing else. If you remove one of them, it will say that's it, there is nothing else. So it generates through this. And so you can see, for example, if I take this one only, this is just a initial small description or excerpt of this function, which is, this is a function to sum. Then this is a more descriptive description which you want to give, like, which will be displayed after the function definition like this. Here you can literally give a big explanation of this function, any important things you want to mention, and very interestingly, you can even use markdown over here. You can decorate it anyway, and the auto documentation thing I was mentioning about, that also recognizes the markdown, etc., and you can beautify your documentation by just writing those markdown in your code itself. So single source of truth. Next, we come to these parameters. You can see this is a tag again, at param, and then we have the data type, then we have the variable name, and then we have the description of the function. That's it. After that, we have param. So these are simple data type like int, but there can be complex data types also like array or etc., and where you can define the entire structure of the array, which I was talking about. Static code analyzer, it checks the type of the array and like recognizes any unrecognized key you are sending to that array or etc. But let's talk about that later, not here. And then you have the return type, return data type, the return description, anything if you want to mention, or if you don't want to mention, you don't have to do that. or this is very much useful for certain functions, that what it will return. If you want to know, how will you know? It will know that, okay, this is the sum. This seems intuitive, but for certain functions this might be useful. So that's simply PHP docs. So there is a site called phpdoc.org, which basically is a documentation site, which, as I told, to generate auto documentation. But there are certain um, useful documentations for it, like what is a doc block. If you want to learn the basics of doc block, then more on doc blocks, you can see that these things are description, tags, list of tags. So here you can see all the tags which are present, author, category, or etc. All the things. Then annotations, how you can give annotations. Like, this is just scratching the surface. There are much more things which you can do with PHP DocBlock. So this is a PHP doc reference overall if you want to learn about any particular type of tag, etc. So you can just go ahead and check it from here. And yeah, that's it.